Truth and peace, fellow netizens. I'm Bill Milton. Today we're talking about terminology, numeration, and Exodus 20. We're mainly talking about a niche aspect of the sacred text of three different religions: Christianity, Samaritanism, and Rabbinic Judaism. While this next detail would be fit for an entire video unto itself, it should be noted that I am an adherent of Protestant Christianity and have been my entire life. So, the particular text that we're discussing comes from Exodus 20. The label for this section of scriptural text of the stated religions has been translated into different terms for reasons beyond my understanding of linguistics. The applied terminology is often either the Ten Commandments, which was first used in the Geneva Bible, that particular phrasing, or the word Decalogue, which is Greek for 10 words. And this comes from the Septuagint. So the latter term is one of various terms translated from Hebrew alongside 10 sayings, 10 verses, and 10 matters. When you look at how different sects and religions numerate the Decalogue or 10 Commandments, there are 14 clauses, if you will, that are grouped differently, but always into groups of 10. There are two major approaches into categorizing the commandments. One approach is the combination of verses 3 through 6 into a single commandment, while either including another commandment in verse 2, or one of the clauses in verse 14, or dividing up the various clauses in verse 17. The former is favored by Jews via their sacred text, the Talmud, and Samaritans via their sacred text, the Samaritan Pentateuch, respectively, and the latter is favored by both Lutherans and Roman Catholicism. Another approach is distinguishing the prohibition in verse 3 from the prohibitions in verses 4 and 6. This system is how the Ten Commandments are presented in the Septuagint. This is generally followed by most Orthodox Christians, as well as pretty much the entirety of Protestantism, with the notable exceptions of Lutherans. I'm going to read each of the 14 clauses within the Decalogue and explain how it's understood within the categorical framework between these different sects and religions. These will be read and cited in the King James Version of the Bible. The reason for that particular version is going to be part of a later video unto itself. So, Exodus chapter 20, verse 2, the first clause is, I am the Lord thy God. Rabbinic Judaism understands this to be the entire first commandment, while Roman Catholicism understands this to be part of the first commandment. I suspect that those within the Calvinist stream of Protestant Christianity may see this as kind of a faux commandment 0. Verse 3, thou shalt have no other gods before me. The Orthodox and most Protestants understand this as the entire first commandment, while Lutherans and Roman Catholics, as well as Samaritans understand it as part of the first commandment. Rabbinic Judaism understands this as part of the second commandment. Verses 4 through 6, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images. This is commandment number 2 for the Orthodox Protestants and Rabbinic Jews, as well as part of the first commandment for Lutherans, Catholics, and Samaritans. For verses 7 through 16, what the Orthodox Protestants and Rabbinic Jews collectively see as commandments 3 through 9 are understood by Lutherans, Roman Catholics, and Samaritans to be commandments 2 through 8. Each citation therein is understood as its own commandment. Verse 7, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Verses 8 through 11, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Verse 12, honor thy father and mother. Verse 13, thou shalt not kill. Verse 14, thou shalt not commit adultery. Verse 15, thou shalt not steal. Verse 16, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Things get pretty interesting when we get to verse 17. The entirety of it is understood to be the 10th commandment for the Orthodox Protestants and Rabbinic Jews. Samaritans understand the entirety of it to be the 9th commandment. The first two clauses of this verse are thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house and thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. While Lutherans see the first clause as Commandment 9 and the second clause as part of Commandment 10, Roman Catholics, for some weird reason, lump the first clause as part of the 10th commandment and the second as Commandment number 9. Save for the Samaritans, all see the remaining part of verse 17 as part of the 10th commandment, which is nor his maidservants, nor his manservants, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Now, side note, since the word ass is in a general reference to donkeys, and this is actually part of the legitimate King James Version of the Bible, I feel that I can say this without any reservation or any conviction. Now, the Samaritan Pentateuch has an additional text on verse 17 that is their 10th commandment, which is, you shall set up these stones which I command you on a Gerizim. A Gerizim is basically their holy mountain. It's basically the Samaritan version of Mount Zion. So that's what we have. Peace and truth, fellow netizens.